Hey guys, welcome to the unpredictable, unplanned. No, I'm sorry. Take it from the top. Hey guys, welcome to the Unplanned, Unprepared, and Unpredictable podcast, where the topics are unplanned, where the hosts are unprepared, and the resulting conversations are unpredictable. And in true unpredictable form, the thing that we strive to be. Today's episode is not going to be a conversation because I'm by myself, and honestly, the notion of even attempting to have a kind of a 1 hour monologue with no planned topics, just really just talking from the top of the dome, as some of the hip hop heads would say, off the top of the dome. It's daunting. I'm rambling. Already I am trying to say words whilst simultaneously trying to plan what I will say next. And so we'll see how it goes. But um, Thomas or Gerald, Jerry, Tom, whoever my co-host is today, he's not here. Yeah, well, he was supposed to be. We planned to record an episode today, but he is nowhere to be found. So we had the idea that on the weeks where our schedules don't match and only one of us is available, maybe we'll try doing these a monologue style podcast to see how it goes. And guys, this is not even 2 minutes in, and I'm already running out of things to talk about. So yeah, what's been up with me? It's the new year. It's January, 2025. We made it, guys, to the new year. Congratulations. Any New Year's resolutions for you guys? I understand you can't respond, but I'm gonna kind of just make noises as if you are responding, so that you can vocalize some of your resolutions. So yeah, you guys have any New Year's resolution for 2025? Hmm. Oh, interesting. Oh yeah, that sounds challenging and interesting and rewarding, if I'm to be honest. Hmm. Yeah, well, I wish you all the luck. I hope that all your resolutions are you follow through on all of them, because that's the issue with resolutions, right? So I'll be honest and say that New Year's resolutions for me, to be honest, are a little weird. They're kind of odd, right? Because the new year, it's not like it's anything special. It's really just an arbitrary point in time where we say, "Oh, this is the start of the year." Like it's not like there's any special, unless I'm incorrect, and astrologically there is some sort of significance in the position that the Earth is in relation to the sun. But I don't think so. I mean, it must have been when the first year was considered. It just kind of picked a day and said, okay, well, this is the start of the year, right? And then, but there's nothing special about it. So the notion of, well, now that it's the new year, I can try to get my life together, or I can make some lofty goals and try to achieve them. Whatever the thing is, right? It's it's just so random and arbitrary. Like you can resolve to have a resolution whenever you want. Like, in the middle of the year, you can say, "Well, I want to do better at this, so I'm gonna resolve to spend more time and effort on a particular thing and get better at it." Or I'm gonna resolve to not not perpetuate a unhealthy habit, or something like that, right? So the first, my kind of rant will be, or I guess, yeah, the first part of this rant is, I don't understand New Year's resolutions. Like, I don't understand the power behind it. Like, why people give special significance to it. If that's how your mind works, and you believe there's special significance to it, and it helps you do those things, that's great. All I'm trying to say is, the day January 1st in and of itself, there's nothing special about that day. You can choose to have resolutions whenever you want. So just throwing that out there for you guys. And the resolution is only as good as your discipline will allow you to carry those forward, right? So again, there's nothing special in the date or the word New Year's resolution. Just because you categorize something as a New Year's resolution doesn't give it any like special ability to become easier or anything like that, right? It's the same amount of effort that you're gonna have to put into doing that thing, whether it was January the 1st or not. And so, if you have a New Year's resolution to do something that's positive for you, great. If you don't, why not? Maybe you need to look at your life and see what areas of improvement you can make. And lastly, if you fail at your resolution, then you don't have to wait until the next year to start and create a new one. You can just say, well, I messed up. Maybe it was something you were trying not to do and then you fell to the temptation and did it. Then just like pick yourself back up and say, okay, I'm going to try again. I know I screwed up, but I'll try again. Like you don't have, there's nothing about, like I think there, maybe some people are, they find significance in, well, for the entire year of 2025, I either did this every day or I did this 3 times a day or I didn't do something at all. Like maybe there's some significance to that too. But if you screw something up in January and you find yourself saying, well, then that's a bust. So I'm just going to wait until the next year to create a different resolution. Then, I think that's a little silly. I think you can make a resolution whenever you want. Yeah, so my resolutions, I don't really have many. Well, as most of you guys, or if you're a listener, as you might know, I'm a Christian. So most of my resolutions revolve around getting closer to God and being a more faithful follower of His commandments. Yeah, so if you guys don't know, oh, you know what? Let me do this. Let me take this opportunity to explain to you why I am a Christian. Reason number one, I think Christianity, the entire religion, hinges on one event in history. And that event is the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So I think most people will agree Jesus Christ as a person existed. There was a man named Jesus who started some sort of movement that the Roman Empire was aware of, and the Jewish Pharisees and the priests and like the kind of the people in power of the Jewish peoples that they were not happy about. So that is just a historic fact, right? So let's just start from there. Now this guy, some people just consider him a good teacher, a prophet, whatever have you. But historically, we know that he was killed. He was crucified, right? Roman crucifixion, notorious, like historically notorious, humiliating, painful way of dying. And we know that there were at least several hundred people who claimed to see him walking around after the fact. And in fact, there were at least 12 people, talking about the apostles, that, well, I guess not including Judas because he killed himself, but 11 disciples who believed in the resurrection so much that they found themselves at being killed for those beliefs. So it's easy enough to die for something when you believe it to be true, even if it's a lie, right? So if I told you, if you can die, or if I put a gun to your head and said, tell me, like, if you don't eat this raspberry, then I'm gonna shoot you in the head, right? And if you believe that eating that raspberry will somehow cause the apocalypse and the end of the world, then you might say, well, I'll just get killed and spare the world from the apocalypse. Obviously, that's a ridiculous claim to make. Eating a raspberry, why would that cause the apocalypse, like the end of the world, right? But if whoever that person is believed that to be true, then their action of dying for that can make sense. But if that person knew that that was a lie, that person knew this rumor about this world-ending raspberry is around, but he knew that that was a lie for sure, then he wouldn't die for that, right? He would just go ahead and eat that raspberry because he would know that the end of the world, the apocalypse, wouldn't happen. So in that same way, a lot of the early, the original disciples of Jesus Christ, the 11 that remained after his crucifixion, they believed in the resurrection so much that they were persecuted to the point of death from people saying, stop preaching about Jesus. Stop preaching about the Son of God who you claim to be, Jesus Christ. And they said, no, like this is really important. This is what we were commanded to do by this Son of God. And we'll do it because we don't fear you. We only fear God. That is a easy enough thing to do, even if it's a lie, if the disciples themselves believed that it was true, right? So some of you guys might be wondering or thinking that, well, maybe the disciples were tricked and they believed it to be true, but Jesus never really resurrected. But maybe they were momentarily insane, or they were mistaken, and they somehow made themselves believe that this guy really rose from the dead. The issue with that is you need strong belief in something if it's something you're willing to die for. And so if like the notion that maybe the disciples kind of saw like a blur in the background that kind of resembled Jesus and said, oh my goodness, he must be alive. And then them dying for that, I think that's ridiculous. I don't think anyone would do that. Like you would need real, undeniable, solid proof that this guy who claimed to be the Son of God died and then came back to life in order to give your life for that cause, right? And so I think that the historical event of the crucifixion of Jesus and his resurrection is so significant because nobody else in history resurrected themselves after having prophesied about it and after claiming to be the Son of God and doing all the miraculous things that he did and fulfilling so many different prophecies written from the hundreds to like thousands of years before he even existed. Like you bring all of those things together and pin it on the act of the crucifixion, right? Like that event, the crucifixion, and you kind of just lay it all out. Like the mathematical probability of it being an accident or just a man-made machination that brought it to life, I think is beyond astronomically impossible, statistically speaking. Like all those things kind of lining up. And so that's part one, right? Like I'm convinced based on the historical facts that Jesus, this guy who went around claiming to be the Son of God, saying that he's going to die and then come back and be raised from the dead in 3 days, like, and then actually doing it, I think the historical reliability of that belief, I think, is overwhelming. Not just it's reasonable, I think it's actually overwhelming. If you look at kind of the ripple effect of everything that happened afterwards. And so that is part one. Part two is just the personal relationship that I have with Christ. The experiences that I've had in prayer, in praising, and in just pleading with God during times of desperation. Just the personal experiences that I have had. I think those two things put together, Jesus, I believe, Jesus who was the Son of God, right? The Trinity, right? He was God, holy God. He came to the world as a human so that he can live a perfect sinless life and be crucified and be killed by us, although he did nothing to deserve it, so that he can take on the consequence of the sins that we, humanity, commit. And if we believe that Jesus was the Son of God, that he died for us, and he is our Savior, and we submit under him as Lord, then that gives us salvation from the coming wrath of our sin, the things that we do that is missing the mark of what the standard God set for us is. And so, yeah, that's why I'm a Christian. That's kind of the gospel in a really convoluted and needlessly complicated nutshell that I put it in. But yeah, if you're ever curious about it, go to a church. I don't know where you guys live. I don't know what our audience demographic is, but if you have any Christian friends around you, go ask them. Strike up a conversation, or go to a church and try to figure this out. Because I mean, Christianity is either of the utmost importance or of zero importance. Like, there's no middle ground here, because if what Jesus said is true, then we need to be living lives, fruitful lives that are for God, as followers of Christ, doing the things that he's commanded us to do, all these things, because that's what, like, we need to become. Like, that's kind of what you automatically become when you, like, truly love Jesus, right? Like, how can you kind of just, like, halfway like a guy who died for you, and who's the God of the universe, and who says, like, "Oh, follow me, and I'll give you everlasting life." Like, that's a bold claim, right? And he backed it up with his actions by kind of doing what he said he'll do. So if that's the God that is kind of has spoken into humanity and kind of given us direction on how he wants us to live and all that, then that has to be either the most important thing because it's true, or the least important thing because it's completely false. Like, there's no middle ground there. Like, the very nature of what Christianity is, what following Christ is, doesn't lend itself to be kind of a halfway or partial thing. It's either of the utmost importance, or no importance at all. So, having said that, I do think it would behoove all of the listeners, anyone listening, to investigate some of these things. And talking about this, it kind of reminds me of the kind of like Christian YouTube, as I call it. There's these group that there are a lot of Christian content creators out there on YouTube and podcast and stuff like that. And the one who's kind of the most famous right now, he's had a viral moment, is a guy named Wesley Huff. He's this expert in ancient religious text. He's Canadian. He's had like miraculous healing that's happened to him in his life, and he had a moment because this other guy named Billy Carson, who claimed to be an expert in similar fields, started going around and saying some really outlandish things about Christianity, like saying stuff like, "Oh, the earlier versions of the Bible don't even claim that Jesus was crucified." He said things about, like, Jesus had a wife, like aliens, and like the early creation story was completely copied from a different religion's creation story. Like, all these kind of weird things to undermine Christianity. And he kept going around saying, "Oh, I'll debate anyone you want, and I'm an expert in this thing, so yeah, I can debate anyone." And so he did. Like, he debated Wesley Huff. Well, it was presented as more of just a conversation, right? And I think Wesley Huff, if you have a chance to look up Wesley Huff and Billy Carson debate, it's probably still on online somewhere. I'm saying probably because Billy Carson actually threatened to sue the moderator of the debate if he didn't take it down, who apparently was his good friend. But anyways, Billy Carson, he gets like destroyed. Like not just, oh, Wesley Huff made some good points and Billy Carson also has some good points. It was Wesley Huff literally dismantled like three or four of Billy Carson's kind of most popular claims against Christianity, and it was brutal. Like, and Wesley Huff, I think, did a really good job of doing it as gently and as humbly as he could, because he's a Christian, right? So he did it really well, and because Billy Carson kind of went crazy and started trying to sue everybody, saying, "Oh, you got to get rid of this podcast. It was really biased. Like I wasn't ready for it, and like I want you to delete it, and all that kind of stuff." It had the Barbara Streisand effect, and it's blown up. And I think it's all culminated in a Joe Rogan episode that a lot of Christians were looking forward to, and it was great. It's a 3 hour long episode. If you have time to go listen to it, you should go listen to it. Just because Wesley Huff just knows his thing, and yeah, he got to kind of share the gospel with Joe Rogan, and I think it looks like Joe Rogan has his stance on Christianity isn't the same as it was like maybe 5 6 years ago when he would say things like, look, the Bible is just too unreliable, like there's no way that the Bible like retains original messaging, like all these kind of things. But after this conversation, I think he's been softening on that stance already, but after this conversation, for sure, like there was an example of apparently it's something called the Great Isaiah Texts, where the book of Isaiah, there's one that was like fully intact, and it's almost identical to the modern translations that we have. Like so the message and the meaning and the content of the book hasn't changed in thousands of years of translation. So like things like that, I think has been cool to witness, because as a Christian, I understand the worldview is Christianity is ridiculous and it's unreasonable, and you have to be really gullible and believe in superstition to believe that this is real. But the more you look at it honestly, and you look at all different aspects of it, so not just, because Wesley Huff, the whole Wesley Huff thing is mostly on claims of biblical text, right? Like, are they reliable? Do they retain the original meaning? All that kind of stuff. But like not even just from that perspective, but like all different sides of Christianity, right? Like a big thing is evolution versus intelligent design. Like a lot of people say intelligent design is utterly ridiculous and needs to be dismissed off the bat, or yeah, just straight away, because it's ridiculous and there's nothing scientific about it. But if you really start looking into evolution and intelligent design, there are things that I think a honest, intelligent scientist can say, well, these things we have to consider. Like we might have to consider intelligent design, because there are things that evolution simply can't like explain. Like there's the concept of irreducible complexity, where if there's a system, and if you remove any single part of that system, and that system ceases to function, then that is an irreducibly complex system. So an example is the example that whenever, like if you look it up, the example that will come up is a mousetrap. Like if you have the board, you have the spring, you have the lever and the bait. and the thing that like snaps on the mouse, right? Like if you remove any one part of that, then it can't function as a mousetrap. And if you think about the claim of evolution, it's everything is built upon a really simplistic single cell life form, and it builds upon that to become what we are today. But if you find something that's irreducibly complex, then you have to ask the question, how did that thing evolve into this thing? Like, because evolution is supposed to be additive, right? Adding things on a little bit at a time. But how would that have happened if there's no function if you remove any single part of that thing? So that's, evolution. And then there's like philosophy, right? Like the beginning of the universe, how like it's impossible that the universe is eternally young. Like I think the conversation around like the age of the universe is, it used to be, well, the universe is eternal, so that it had no beginning. But you look at like the movement of the planets and things like that, like how the moon is like slowly, ever so slightly drifting away from the Earth. Like you take all these things into consideration and you say, well, no, like if you rewind the time back, then it doesn't work. Like there needs to have been a beginning point somewhere, right? And then so you have to ask all these like sort of questions about then who brought the earth or the universe into being and existence. So I personally think that this is a really long-winded and convoluted way of saying there are many things to investigate. Just take your pick and investigate some of these things, because I think if you're a ardent atheist or agnostic or someone who rejects Christianity, I think you'd be surprised at what you find. And again, Christianity is either of the utmost importance or no importance at all. That being the case, you owe it to yourself to investigate it. Right? You can either write it off as hocus pocus, or it might be something that you need to really consider and give your life to. So, yeah. I honestly, I've forgotten why I started out. Why was I talking about being a Christian? Oh yeah, New Year's resolution. Yeah, so I wanted to. My New Year's resolution is to become closer to God and learn more about Him, and continue reading the Bible consistently. Do you guys know there's a raging wildfire in California? As I've been watching some videos, it's really scary. If we have any listeners in LA, please evacuate when you hear the evacuation calls. Please be safe. There's one video in particular I saw, two guys who are still in their house, and it literally looks like hell outside. Like it's like the winds are so strong. Apparently the winds in that area are like as strong as like 100 miles per hour. So like there's tons of just wind out there, fire all around. I've heard that they've since evacuated safely. We don't know what's happened to the house, but it's so crazy to think that in an instant your entire life can be uprooted and you have to start from scratch. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what I would do if my house burnt down and I lost literally everything I owned. Yeah, so yeah, be safe out there, guys. Count your blessings. Yeah, and don't put your hope in the things of this world, because you literally, you never know when they can be taken away from you. So yeah, that's the wildfires. Um, I have to be honest. I'm surprised I've gotten this far, because for newer listeners, you might not know this, but one of the quirks of our podcast is every episode has to be exactly 1 hour long. I think some like vary a little bit. Like some are like an hour 2 seconds or like an hour 4 seconds, but on the whole, we want it to be an hour long. And I've been talking for just around 30 minutes right now, so I'm proud of myself for being able to talk without having anything planned up to this point. So, and like, yeah, actually, now that I mention it, let me give you guys a refresher about what our podcast is. Our podcast is supposed to be two guys talking about a random topic. And the randomness of it, we tried doing kind of the AI random topic generator, but that wasn't really fun, nor was it that great. So we don't really plan anything. We don't research anything. We just get on the computer and we start recording and say, hey, let's have a conversation. Okay, like what should we talk about? And then we usually stumble upon like two or three things to talk about. I think the thing that makes it fun is the fact that me and Gerald, we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things. Like we, like politically and just philosophically, like we definitely have a lot of commonality, but we also have a lot of differences in the way that we think. So it's when you see those disagreements that we have, they're genuine. Like we really are disagreeing on certain things. I think politically, especially during like the the election season, we had a lot of those conversations. But the fact that we're still friends, even though we have so many differences in terms of our outlook on, or just a lot of just the way that we think, right, is very different. Yeah, I think that's what makes it fun. It's watching two friends that their relationship is not at risk because they're having this disagreement, but they're still having a disagreement and they're trying to convince one another that their stance is right, or questioning the other person's like thought process or stance or what have you. So that's what the podcast is, and like it kind of has become. And again, these conversations, like we're not, we haven't researched anything on the topic. We just kind of talk based on what we know. So it's a good representation of what a layman or like a average Joe thinks about certain things. So I'm sure both Thomas and I said wrong things, plenty of them, but it's because we're not experts in the things that we're talking about, or we don't claim to be. But this is just kind of what a typical guy probably thinks about that topic. So it's informative, at least insightful in that sense. And obviously, our names aren't Tom and Jerry, but we chose to use pseudonyms because I don't know, we don't want our personal lives out there, I guess. Yeah, and then that's also why the logo or the picture that's associated with every clip, every video of this podcast is just three guys with earphones and microphones. That is an AI generated clip. We said three guys because we thought it'd be fun to pretend like there's a third guy named Kevin, who we just kind of don't let that person talk, and it's just Tom and Jerry talking while Kevin's kind of in the background. Um, and we want to make sure that, and this is just an added quirk, like we just said, hey, let's cut it off exactly in an hour. So there are many podcasts, and it's usually my co-host, whatever his name is. It's usually him recording on his computer. Like we don't do it in person; we do it online. So he's recording on his end. So I end up never really knowing at what point we are in the podcast in terms of time. So there's plenty. A lot of episodes actually end mid sentence. Like I'm in the middle of saying something and then it ends, which is kind of fun. I think it's you know what you're getting in terms of the time commitment. You don't know what you're getting in terms of the content. You don't know at all. And another thing that we're doing is we're not advertising this to any of our personal friends. So we want to bank 100 episodes before we start kind of announcing it to our friends and kind of putting it out there. And we've had conversations about this. I don't agree with that. Gerald thinks that's a great idea. I don't, and you know what? I honestly, I kind of get it because by nature, I instigate a little bit. So I don't know. That's a weakness of mine where I think it's funny when people say things that are a little bit incriminating, I guess is the word, for lack of a better term. So like, uh, yeah, Gerald has said some honest things on the podcast. That's not the most PC, especially toward some people that he loves in real life. I think it's all better now. Like he's talked about past issues, so it's all better now. But I can understand his resistance and hesitation to kind of circulating this too widely because he doesn't want those people to hear and all that. I get it, but also Gerald's aspiration for this podcast is one day us monetizing it somehow. But how are we gonna monetize on the podcast no one's listening to? Like I look at the numbers and we get like maybe 2 or 3 listens per episode. So like it's virtually nobody listening out there. We get some decent views on on the clips, on the AI clips that we make. Those kind of reels and TikToks and those shorts videos. They're all AI generated. Um, in the sense that we feed the podcast episode and then it kind of edits it and chops it up like that. So we get some good views on those. If you're listening to this, you probably found us through that. But the actual conversations, the actual podcast itself, very little listens. So how are we gonna monetize something that isn't of value to anybody because there's no one actually engaging with it? That's my thing. Have I ever been able to articulate that fully on this podcast? I don't know because Thomas is always he's always interrupting me or trying to make his points. I don't know if I ever made that point fully like that before. But yeah, that's our podcast. Any other quirks about this podcast that you need to know about? Um, the Up Three. Oh, if we call it the Up Three podcast because the 3 words unplanned, unprepared, and unpredictable. It's un and the P word, right? So unpredictable, unplanned. So that's why it's UP. So Up Three. Sorry, I had to drink water. You talk for like 30 minutes straight and your throat gets dry, your mouth gets dry. That is something I didn't know. I don't think I've ever talked this long by myself before in my life. This this is significant because it doesn't exist anywhere else. I've never, I mean, let alone record it, right? But I've never had a conversation with myself like this for this long of a period of time. So if I take breaks, occasional breaks here and there to drink water, yeah, please pardon the awkward silence. But I mean, I gotta keep myself hydrated because yeah, this is taxing. This is taxing. So if my co-host were on with me right now recording something, what would I talk about next? I don't know what significant thing. I've been pretty consumed with the whole Billy Carson, Wesley Huff thing. Um, Anything beyond that? Yeah, the wildfires in L.A. Um, Quantum computing. Have you guys heard about this? Google apparently has a computer that can, like, apparently there's this kind of uh, problem, like a data set and a problem, like a computing problem that they use to um, measure computing speed, and something that would take like a regular supercomputer, right? Like a supercomputer in like the government uses, like those supercomputers. Something that would take that computer like billions. I think the number they used is septillion. I honestly don't even know how many zeros that is, but septillion years. Something that would take a supercomputer that long to do. This quantum computer apparently did it in 15 minutes, which is crazy to think about. Like the scale of that, I don't even know if I fully grasp. But something that takes, it would be significant if quantum computing could reduce the time of something that took days or weeks to do down to 15 minutes. But this is billions upon billions of years worth of computing being compressed into 15 minutes. I think that it's gonna change the world. Like if it actually does what Google is claimed that it does, it's going to change the world. How can it not? I I, I mean, like with the advent of large language models like AI, and having compute like insanely fast, like incomprehensibly fast. Like this is how incomparable this is. Some smart guy, who's into this, the guy who did the quantum computing thing, he said that the speed of that quantum computer proves the existence of the multiverse, because like I honestly I don't really understand it, but apparently because of how fast it was able to pull out these answers, it must have traversed into parallel universes to pull um, different variations, or yeah, I don't even know how to explain it, but something to do with multiverse, and this because of the speed of the computing. That I mean, I don't know that that makes sense to me, but just the fact that somebody is considering using the concept of the multiverse to try to explain the speed of this computing, I think is ridiculous. So you couple this extremely fast computing speed with the ability to take large sets of data and reorganize it, like AI does. Like we're not too. I can only imagine we're not too far off from being able to create at least in terms of media, right? Like whether it's like stories or videos or music, or like we can kind of create whatever we want. Something that Levi Zachary Levi said on the George Janko podcast is, um, he said we're not too far off from a reality where you can prompt I want to watch a movie about Batman teaming up with Iron Man to defeat, I don't know, to defeat Godzilla, and then like, you kind of give it a prompt like that, and um, one day we'll have like a system where, yeah, it'll just kind of create that movie for you on the fly and then show it to you. And yeah, when I first heard that, I thought, no, that's ridiculous. But I'm starting to believe that that future is not too far off. Like it's crazy, right? Like there we might be headed toward a future where movie stars, writers, like these people who create these stories, like all of these things might not exist because everything is going to be created via AI. One thing I think that, as a culture, we've shifted away from like live cable TV, right? And we're all kind of in the era of streaming content. What that's done is it's given us so many more variety, so many different things, but it's taken away from the more centralized experience of the masses, right? Like it used to be that we would all watch the episode of one TV show together, right? I mean, we're not together physically, but at the same time because that's when it was being aired, and you would talk about it the day after around the water cooler because you would know that a lot of people watched that thing. We have some of that with like really hyper popular TV shows, like when like Stranger Things um, gets released, people will binge it and then they'll talk about it. But it used to be way more like there were way more people who watched the same thing you watched because if you didn't watch it at that time, like you kind of didn't know what other time you would be able to watch it. Like you weren't sure if it'll like come out on reruns. It's not like you can kind of go back and just click on something and watch it again. Like you would have to wait for it to appear on TV, right? So um, in that same way, I wonder if we'll get to a future of like people can't even really relate to one another through the media they consume because the media you consume is super specific to you, and most of the stuff you're watching is like only being watched by you. Like I wonder what that's gonna do to society and how that's gonna impact the way that we like consume media. Is it gonna blow up and everyone's gonna get way more into TV shows and things like that because we're able to hyper customize it and kind of create the stories and content that we consume ourselves, or is it gonna make it cumbersome and like is it gonna be like options overload? You know the whole analysis paralysis. Like there's so many different options that you can't make one choice. Is it going to be like that, and then is it going to implode on itself? I don't know, but that's a that's something that's yeah on the horizon. You know, a lot of people talk about how the advancement of technology has stalled in the last couple of decades because the speed at which um, uh, technology advanced before that was like breakneck fast, right? Like it was so fast. Like in the 50s, right, to the 70s, the difference was crazy. But if you look at our society now in 2025 and we look back to like 2005, how much difference is there really? I mean, I forget when the first smartphone came out, but in terms of like it becoming a little bit faster or the screen is a little bit clearer, there hasn't been that many innovations or changes to the fundamental functionality of smartphones. Like the leap to smartphone was crazy, but then everything now is just a different variation of that smartphone. So it it seems like technological advancement has stalled a little bit, but I would say that AI is going to be a huge leap forward. Yeah, yeah, because the way that AI is being used now, a lot of the different like if you go online trying to chat with somebody because you need like help like with your cable or something, you're a lot of times actually just chatting with a AI bot. You're not really chatting with a person. Um, and so we're only going to keep further progressing into that, right? There's going to be a time where you're not really sure if who you're talking to is a person or not. Um, I think it's called the Turing test, where um, I forget this guy named something Turing, Alan Turing. He what was he? I don't even know. Was he an author or he was like a scientist or something? But he came up with a set of things to criteria in a test that if you passed those tests, you would say that um, it's like genuine artificial intelligence or something like that. Like, and one of the things is if you can't distinguish whether or not you're talking to a machine or a human, um, then that means that you might have you might have developed genuine AI. All right. And there's a movie called Ex Machina where the whole premise of the movie is it's a Turing test um, on a artificial intelligence robot that this genius guy created. It's a fast. It's like a it's if you're like thriller type, semi horror type movies, like psychological movies. I think it's a really great one to watch. Um, if you're not into that kind of stuff, you probably won't like it. But all that to say, we're already living in a world where if you're chatting with somebody online, you don't know if that person you're chatting with is a human or AI. Maybe there are things you can do like for example for whatever reason AI apparently can't correctly tell you how many letter R's are in the word strawberry. It's supposed to be three, but AI keeps saying there's only two there. So maybe those things, if you know those tricks, you can use it to um, test whether or not you're talking to AI or a human being. But if you don't have that, if you don't know those things, the layperson, right? Most likely you don't know whether you're talking to a human or AI. So the world of science fiction and reality, I think, are gonna start really start merging more and more. And all I have to say about that is I think Andrew Yang was right. If you guys don't know who Andrew Yang is, he was a presidential campaign in 2002, 2022, or no, 2018. I am not sure. See, this is the fun thing about it being a unplanned podcast. I'm never quite sure about the facts I'm spouting out there. But this guy, he was a Asian American presidential candidate who said AI is coming and it's gonna put displace hundreds of thousands of people from work, and we got to do something to take care of those people. Otherwise, we're gonna have a major crisis on our hands. And the specific thing he was talking about at the time, this is almost a decade ago now. The specific thing that he was talking about. Oh wait, no, 2020, no, 2016. Sorry, I got my numbers mixed up. So he was presidential campaign in 2016, and was it 2020? I don't know. 2016 or 2020. And oh wait, hold on. What is this? Guys, my co-host is calling me. Um, hey Thomas, give me 7 minutes because I'm finishing my solo episode because you didn't show up to the recording. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. Yeah, give me 8 minutes. Yeah. So yeah, Andrew Yang, he was right. What what are you? Okay, I'm gonna disconnect from you. No. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. Well, the context of what Andrew Yang was saying is that at the time the self-driving cars were kind of coming up, and it was he was worried about the truckers and all the truckers that would be displaced. But I think we have a completely different issue, a completely different crisis that's looming, because there are tens of thousands of truck drivers out there, and they certainly need to be taken care of. But we're talking about potentially millions of people, right? Because it's not just drivers now. It's anywhere from like writers, proofreaders. Like imagine you have a manuscript, you can just ask AI to proofread the whole thing for you. Some like legal advice, like maybe not lawyers, but like paralegals, um, or like translators, people who make money translating. Like you can literally translate using ChatGPT now. Um, so there's potentially millions of people who might lose their jobs, and there might not be jobs for them to go into. And I would argue that that's happening now, right? Like a lot of tech companies, a lot of big companies did these rounds of layoffs, even though they're making record profits. And I think, and they don't come outright and say it, but I think it's because they are um, assigning AI to different parts of their company where they can. And so if I were Andrew Yang, I would be singing, "I told you so," right? We got to do something about it. Universal basic income was going to be his solution. Give people money just right up to the poverty line, um, so that they don't have to worry about starving to death because they can't find a job. And that, there's a podcast episode with Joe Rogan, of Joe Rogan with Andrew Yang, and he explains all the different benefits and positives that would have came from that. But nobody voted for him. He after I think like the first state that did that voted in the primary, like he like dropped out almost immediately after that because he wasn't seeing the numbers that he wanted to see. All that to say, I don't know. Wow, it's been 56 minutes, guys, of just nonstop monologuing because my co-host Thomas ended up showing up like 5 minutes ago. You're you're here. You're okay. You're here, but whatever you're saying, the listeners can't hear because nobody nobody can hear. Actually, hold on. Can you say something? Can you say something?
So, hello, 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 hello.
I don't know.
Unplanned, unprepared. Can you hurry up?
I don't know. I tried putting my earphone up to the mic to see if it would catch some of the stuff you're saying. I don't think it did it. I don't think it did it. So I I understand it's the worst way to do it, but it's also, you understand, I'm recording myself talking and you're like talking to me and really throwing off the flow of the things I'm trying to say. So, uh, anyways, excuse me, sir, please. So guys, closing in on the hour. I talked about a lot today. If you have any questions, anything you wanted to, especially the first part where I kind of explained why I'm a Christian. Glad to talk to people about that. My co-host, Gerald, he also would be thrilled to talk about those kind of things. So if you want to reach out to us, feel free to leave us a note, a comment, anything like that on any of our social media things. Up3 podcast is our handle for most of it. Instagram, TikTok, YouTube as well, I believe. So feel free to go to those things and do those things. And it's been great. I I I'm really tired. I didn't think that this would be so draining. Um, and I honestly, I don't know if anyone's gonna enjoy this. Like you you barely enjoy. Like, what do other podcasts do? I don't really listen to podcasts where it's just one person talking. But well, actually, no, I take that back. I do, but they always have kind of a program in mind. They have different subjects, different things that they're gonna talk about lined up. Being able to do this without any preparation beforehand, I honestly think it's an amazing feat. It's something significant that I've done here today. It wasn't nothing. I don't know that any just Joe Schmo can do this. I honestly, I don't know if my co-host can do this. I he's supposed to do one of these sometime as well, once as well, but he's still talking to me like as if you guys can hear him. But all right, bye.